In the observer pattern, publishers and subscribers are typically aware of each other. In the publish-subscribe pattern, we completely remove this dependency. Publishers don't have a clue and they don't care who the subscribers are. Instead of notifying subscribers directly, they just publish a message to what's known as a message broker. To make it easier for you to reason about, think of a publisher as a newspaper publisher. They print a bunch of newspapers and send those to the post office. Here, the post office is our message broker. You, I, or anyone else who lives close to this post office may subscribe to receive these newspapers. So in this chain, we are subscribers. Notice that in this example, the publisher and the subscribers only care about the post office. It's where they send the newspapers and where they get them from. Most likely you will be using this architectural pattern when you're trying to send data between different services. Now, a little note about the message itself. While the publishers and subscribers do not need to know about each other, they still have to agree on the message format. In our newspaper example, if I subscribe to receive the New York Times and one day I received some Chinese newspaper from this publisher, I won't be able to read it, so it would just go straight to trash. Now let's talk about implementing this pattern. It's actually really simple but a little bit tricky at the same time. For the demonstration purposes, I'm only going to show you the happy path of how this may work. And we're not going to discuss any limitations and what could go wrong with this approach in this video. We're going to use a RabbitMQ Docker container and RabbitMQ queue as our message broker. First, I'm going to start the RabbitMQ container using the command you see on the screen. I'm not going to get into too much detail about what's going on here. Just note that the numbers after -p are the port mappings, so we could access the ports in the Docker container from our host computer. Now we can go to localhost 8080 to set up our message broker. Username and password are guest and guest by default. There are actually different types of message brokers we could use, and each of them has their own use case. If you want me to make a video on different types of message brokers, say I do in the comments. For this example, we're going to use a queue. All we need to do is put the queue name and click Add Queue. Now we can write some code to publish to the queue and read from the queue. I'm actually just going to use the Hello World example from the RabbitMQ website, since it can quickly let us get something working. First, we need to install the Pika package with pip3 install Pika. I recommend doing it in Python virtual environment or in a Docker container. Then we create a connection using localhost as the host and create a channel that we will use to publish our messages. Then we will call the basic publish method on the channel we created, passing in an empty string to the exchange, the queue name that we used in RabbitMQ management tool as the routing key, and our hello world message as the body. And finally, we'll close the connection. If you run this program now, the message count on our queue should change if you look at the RabbitMQ portal again. We can also take a peek at the message itself from the portal. Now let's implement the subscriber part. It's going to be a little more complicated than the publisher, because we want to keep running this program and process the messages as soon as we receive them, since we don't know when the messages are going to appear on the queue. Once again, we create the connection with localhost as host and the connection channel. Then we define a callback function, which defines what we should do when we receive a message. Here, we'll just print that we received it and the content or body of the message. Then we define how we want to consume the message, from which queue and what function we should execute on receiving one, which is the callback function we defined earlier. And finally, we call the start consuming method on the channel, and now we can run this program. Notice that we still have the message on the queue, so right after we start this program, it should print hello world message. And if we change our message and try it again, you can see that we get the message pretty much immediately. And if you look at the portal again, we see that the messages are now gone from the queue. And that was the simplest implementation of the pub/sub pattern for you. And if you still have not watched the video on the observer pattern, then click right here.